everyone. Welcome to the Academic Writing Series. I'm Dr. Pravina Rodrigues, co-editor-in-chief of Springer's Journal of Dharma Studies and professor at Starr King School for the Ministry in California. I've written a book, published several articles, and have been a writing coach for grad students in the United States for several years. Have you ever read 3 books on the same topic only to find that each one totally contradicts the other? Well, you're not alone. In this video, we're diving into Zachary Shore's Grad School Essentials to break down exactly how to critique a text, not just read it. All the examples you'll hear come straight from his book. By the end of this video, you'll know what a critique really is and how to do it without academic embarrassment. So let's go. Why critique in the first place? Why can't we just read, agree or disagree, and move on? Well, according to Zachary Shore in Grad School Essentials, critique isn't just another academic exercise. It's a window into how scholarly our mind is. One of the ways that professors, even other academics, will assess our intelligence is through the critiques we make. It's not the only way, but it's a major one. Because when you critique, you're not just responding to content, you're demonstrating your ability to think rationally, to analyze arguments, and detect weak reasoning or unsupported claims. Shore says that our critiques reveal how our thoughts work. And I think this is true because they expose the structure of our logic, our emotional tendencies, even our intellectual values. In short, Shore says we are flaunting our naked brain. That's why critique matters. It's not just about the author you're reading. It's about your clarity, your depth, your discipline. And yes, it leaves a lasting impression. In this video, we're using Zachary Shore's Grad School Essentials to clear up a common academic mistake. A critique is not a summary. A real critique is an analysis, a sharp test of whether the author's arguments actually stand or collapse. A critique is not a rant about how boring the text was. That's all middle school stuff. A critique is an analysis of the author's arguments. It's a rigorous, probing test of the soundedness of their claims, says Zachary Shore. And your job is to figure out which arguments hold up and which fall apart. Now, because a critique is not a book report or a summary, you won't say stuff like, well, first the author said this, and then the author said that, and present the entire summary of what the author says. You would not do that. However, you would critically dissect the text and find whether the arguments hold water or not. Most importantly, a critique is not a complaint, which means that you would not say, oh, it was boring or uninteresting, so on and so forth. You can leave that for your friends and your neighbors and whoever you call in the evening. And while we're on the subject of what not to do, let's talk about ad hominem attacks. That's when instead of critiquing the argument, you go after the person who has made it by saying sometimes statements like, this author clearly has a political agenda, or he's just another rich, privileged academic. She's probably never been to the field that she's writing about, so on and so forth. So these kinds of comments are not real critiques, Shore will say. They're distractions because they tell us nothing about the strength or weakness of the argument itself. Zachary Shore doesn't spell this out directly in this section in his book, but it fits perfectly with his warning against cheap, lazy critiques. Cheap critique, Shore warns, is when students love to say things like, you know, the author wrote about political turmoil in Kenya, but they totally missed talking about Tanzania or Somalia. Or the author discussed the 3-toed sloth, but they totally ignored the 2-toed one. Here's the deal, and this is what Shore says. He says that a book or even an article, by definition, is a bounded endeavor, and it is limited by time and space. Every author has to draw the line somewhere and has to limit their research, sometimes even by a word count. So if your critique is just they didn't talk about something else, that's not deep enough. He says that is a lazy critique. The only time that that kind of critique actually works is when the omission seriously distorts the thesis, the argument, or the presentation of the story. He then gives an example of Thomas Edison. Say, for example, Edison completely leaves out his stepmother who hypothetically encouraged him or funded his invention of the phonograph. That would be a major omission because it changes our understanding of Edison's life. So here's the bottom line. If you are going to critique an author for not having done something, that something needs to be essential to our understanding. It needs to be important to the argument or the presentation itself. Otherwise, it's just noise, and scholars and professors can tell the difference. Before we dive into a real example, Shore gives us a bird's eye view of how to approach any academic text with a critical mindset. Here's the big idea. You can attack an argument's logic or its empirics along three main fronts: the thesis, the methods, and the sources. So let's break that down for you. What are the premises or the assumptions that the author is making? What's the conclusion or the thesis? What's the key evidence that has been presented? Write this out in short, clear sentences. Shore says that doing this helps you see whether the argument actually holds up or is it just convincing to look at. Ask yourself, does the conclusion follow logically from the premises? Are other explanations possible? Is the conclusion overstated? And here's a tip from Shore. If someone refers to their own work as groundbreaking or revolutionary, be suspicious. Next is method check. Look at how the author conducted their research. Are the methods appropriate for the question? Would a different method lead to a different result? Are the standards that were used too strict or too sloppy? Remember, method is the way a subject is being approached or studied. Examine the sources. Are they old or are they new? If they are new, do they add anything truly new to the field or to the discipline? Or are they just rehashing old ideas and concepts? If they are old, are we asking new questions or are we using them in fresh ways? So the key test is to check if the scholarship actually advances our understanding of people, cultures, religions, time periods. And that's how you give a strong critique. And yes, if after all of that, you find that the author's argument holds up, that's perfectly fine. But remember that no book is perfect. And Shore encourages us to assume that there are always flaws. We need to just train our eyes to spot them. And that's how you move from being a passive reader to a sharp, analytical thinker. A critique is not a book report or a summary, a reiteration of everything that the author wrote. A critique is a rigorous analysis of the author's thesis, its strengths, and its weaknesses. Strong critiques only discuss what the author failed to do if that omission is essential to our understanding of the subject. To make a strong critique, do the following. Isolate the thesis in a single clear statement. List the main premises and conclusion in simple, clear statements. Identify the main assumptions on which each premise rests. Ask whether the conclusion follows logically from the premises. And that's your critique. I was going to give you an example, but I realized that you are really smart and I got to run. I have to take my goldfish for a walk. So happy critiquing. Thank you for watching.